On Sports Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about
lots of things. Dez Bryant got released. Jason Witten is retiring. The Cubs finished April on a winning note. And we're going to talk about Amazon and All or Nothing as well.
Please like and subscribe. And I'm going to get this podcast to my brother.
It's been a month.
Yep. And we had and stuff.
You were busy.
Yeah.
Very busy.
Very busy.
Yeah. But we have time now. We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back, baby.
Yeah. We're back, baby!
We're back and we're better than ever.
Yep. So I'm going to give this podcast to my brother.
Well, we've had a lot going on in the NFL. A lot going on since the last podcast I did, which, can you believe it was a month ago? Yeah, I've just had a lot going on. I do always try to do it on a weekly basis because sports is always changing. The sports world is always changing. But it is But I'm going to try to be more consistent on the podcast when it's done. But I want to thank everyone for listening. It's been fun. I'm not signing off yet. The podcast will still go on as long as I have a microphone and I have a laptop to do it. And thanks to everyone for their support. Coming up on 1 year now since the podcast was started. It is unbelievable. A lot of growth has gone on with this podcast. And going back and listening to some of the things I've said over this year, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't want to toot my own horn, but it is interesting. So I admit I've been rooting against the Cavaliers and the Warriors to make it back to the NBA Finals for the fourth straight year. But after the way the first games ended between the Cavaliers beating the Raptors in overtime in the semifinals, and then the Warriors beating the Pelicans, Steph Curry back on the floor, his first shot, 3 points. Looks like the Warriors and the Cavs are back in the driver's seat for the NBA Finals. We'll see what happens. Toronto with the best record in the Eastern Conference. We're going to see if that means anything with LeBron and the Cavaliers in town. It will be interesting to see what happens the rest of the way. But I'm still going to be watching. But LeBron and Steph Curry, two of the best in the league. And what they do on the basketball floor is nothing short of amazing. So for baseball, I am a Texas Rangers fan. And I am a Chicago Cubs fan. One team is probably going to do a whole lot better than the other this year. The way that the Rangers have such a wide gulf in competition between them and the world champion Houston Astros, and the Cubs, the way they had to spend a lot of money on Yu Darvish to remain competitive. But Kris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo have had trouble staying healthy, staying in the lineup together so far through April. But once these two, Bryant and Rizzo, get back in the lineup, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the league responds. As Bryant and Rizzo, they are like Big Papi, David Ortiz, and Manny Ramirez on the Red Sox in 2004. If you can stop those two, you pretty much have stopped their team's bulk of their team's offense. But for the Rangers, it might be interesting to see what Joey Gallo can do. Last year, he topped 40 home runs for the Rangers in a rebuilding year, and we'll see if he can do that again. Cole Hamels, the ace of the Rangers rotation, we'll see what he does this year so far. But it'll be interesting to see for both teams how they handle the rest of the season. I think the Cubs will handle it much better than the Rangers will. I've said if the season was to end today, I think the Cubs would win 90 games. I think the Rangers will probably lose 90 games. But it's you gotta love the old ballpark. So now with Jason Witten apparently contemplating retirement, and the Dallas Cowboys releasing Dez Bryant at wide receiver, the question now I think for Dallas is, are they about to take one major step forward with a full season of Ezekiel Elliott? Well, they're about to take two major steps backwards with two big pass-catching additions gone from the team. And I really liked what I said the last podcast I did about Jason Witten. And if you missed it, here it is again. So the NFL draft is coming up from Cowboy Stadium in Arlington, and the NFL draft, it seems like every year a huge hype is made over the NFL draft, but more and more I start to feel like the players, the teams that draft out of Major League Baseball, it's not really fair to judge them based on a rookie year. You need to wait several years before determining whether or not their careers are flash in the pan or ones of genuine brilliance across the game. But the draft will be held in Arlington, Texas. And speaking of Cowboys Stadium, I've been thinking about how Jason Witten, the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys for 15 years now, has played his way into Canton, Ohio, as one of the great tight ends in the history of the league. Certainly the greatest tight end in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. Eat your heart out, Jackie Smith, who dropped the winning touchdown when the Dallas Cowboys played Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl, 35-31, one of the greatest Super Bowls ever played, despite that terrible ending. But Jason Witten, the man is a Hall of Famer, and why is Jason Witten a Hall of Famer coming out of the University of Tennessee, the Volunteers? It's because Tony Romo made Jason Witten a Hall of Famer. Whenever Jason Witten was open on third down, and whenever Tony Romo needed 10 yards, it seemed like Tony Romo would get Jason Witten would get Tony Romo 10 yards at least every time, 11 yards every time. I'll never forget that play in Philadelphia when Romo threw the ball over to Jason Witten. Jason Witten's helmet popped off, and he kept on running for an additional, after a helmet-to-helmet hit, popped his helmet off, and he kept running for an additional 10 yards or so. Jason Witten didn't need a helmet that day, and it was one of the more unusual plays. You normally see the helmet pop off like that, and it almost reminded me of seeing the old clips of the old leather helmets from the era of like Sammy Baugh of the 1930s, maybe Sid Luckman of the Chicago Bears from the 1940s. So the old bygone era of football that is gone and never coming back. But it was fun anyway. Jason Witten, the man, 15 years in this league, and I'm wondering what are they going to do to replace him at tight end. What will they do? Will they draft a tight end this year in the draft to replace him? Hope maybe that's probably a good idea. I remember last year when the rumor said that Jason Witten would leave his team during the season to become the head coach at the University of Tennessee. And I actually think Jason Witten would be a great head coach in college or the pros. But the fact that they were saying he was willing to leave his team during the season, I thought was nonsense. But Jason Witten, the man's a Hall of Famer. Give him his Hall of Fame bust in Canton, Ohio, along with John Madden, along with Joe Montana, along with the other greats to play this game, alongside Shannon Sharp, alongside Tony Gonzalez, two other great tight ends in the history of the NFL. He can block, he can catch, he is the most solid receiver on this Dallas Cowboys team. Jason Witten, the man is in Canton, Ohio. A few years from now, after his retirement, the man is the Cowboys personified. Always getting open, never saying a bad word about anybody on this Cowboys team. Jason Witten, the consummate professional. It's too bad the Cowboys can't clone Jason Witten. So I want to talk for a minute about the NFL draft and how I think the Cowboys did in their first round selection, drafting a linebacker to replace Sean Lee, or at least to give him some help in case he gets injured on the season. So that was a good move by Jerry Jones. The third round selection of a wide receiver I thought was another good move. The Cowboys, anybody that knows me knows I'm not the world's biggest fan of Jerry Jones. I think the guy has too much control for the Cowboys. I think Jerry Jones is holding America's team back instead of helping them progress forward. But anyway, this was a good draft, and I think even Jerry Jones couldn't screw this draft up. So, all the team needs that needed to be met, I think he met them. And drafting of a running back, and in the case Ezekiel Elliott went down again, I guess. And the Cowboys did all the right moves in this draft. But the question is not, the Cowboys had a second-round draft pick offer on the table to take Earl Thomas from Seattle. And I would have pulled the trigger on that if I was Jerry Jones, because Earl Thomas is still one of the best safeties in the league, and if all you have to give up is a second-round draft pick, I would take that deal. But it's going to be a lot harder now, and now that the draft is over, for Dallas to land Earl Thomas than it would have been on draft day. Initially, Seattle wanted a first-round pick, then they moved down to a second-round pick for Earl Thomas, and I would have taken that deal if I was Jerry Jones, but it might still be possible for Earl Thomas to come to Big D, to come to Arlington. I would like to see Earl Thomas come to Dallas. I think he still is a playmaker on defense, and I would just love to see the whole Legion of Boom on defense to be broken up entirely. That defense was very good, and that defense could have been known as the greatest defense of all time. You could have beaten Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, two of the greatest of all time, in consecutive years, if you don't make that ridiculous decision to throw the ball on a 5-step drop from the 1-yard line. So, that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing. Seattle would have been the greatest team ever if they had just ran the ball, done the smart thing, done the predictable thing, and ran it into the end zone with Marshawn Lynch again, like they should have done. The first carry, he was stopped at the 1. They should have did it again, had him ram his way through the line. But that's a thought for another day. But I think I agree with most of sports nation, most of the sports universe, that the Seahawks should have ran the ball there. Don't step back 5 yards and throw it into such tight traffic. Made Malcolm Butler a Super Bowl hero for the Patriots, and then he didn't even start in their Super Bowl game against the Eagles. And that was a mistake, if you ask me. Coach Belichick, normally he's great, and the man is a legend. It's easy to criticize folks who are legends in the industry of coaching, but the Eagles won because the Patriots benched Malcolm Butler. I said it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens now that he's been traded to the Titans. Apparently the rift was inseparable in New England. And then we have Rob Gronkowski, apparently mulling his retirement. Tom Brady is apparently mulling his retirement. The Patriots, the curtain on the New England Patriots is about to close. And I think Buffalo realizes that in the draft when they picked up quarterback Josh Allen. So it'll be interesting to see who will take over the AFC East once the Brady dynasty comes to an end. So Amazon has released a new All or Nothing documentary, and I really feel like they have chosen the two perfect coaches, two perfect teams to do an All or Nothing with. On the college scheme, they have chosen the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, Jim Harbaugh, and that will be a very interesting season in the college ranks. And the pros, Jason Garrett and the Dallas Cowboys were chosen as well. And that season had lots of twists and turns for Dallas. The suspension of Ezekiel Elliott, the way Dez Bryant seemed to regress as the season wore on instead of progress, and the way that Dez Bryant basically played himself out of Dallas. It's going to be an interesting series, to say the least. I'll probably check it out this weekend. I'm excited about it. There's not much for Cowboys fans to get excited about other than the health and development of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. But it'll be an interesting way to see the All Access cameras done on the team.
Thanks for listening to the Pals on Sports podcast. Please like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter link will be down below. And I'll see you next time in the next podcast. Bye!